It's a lot of mess in my studio. Time to clean up. This reminds me, I got this from Porsche Museum when I visited them end of 2019, and I haven't edited those videos yet actually. And I got the behind the scene footage back in the renovation garage and everything. Need to check that out. Let's take this away. This is the tool I used when I reviewed the 4.0 GTS Boxster, the green one, if you haven't seen that review. And finally, I bought some frames. And remember, I think it was about 1.5 years ago or something like that. Viewers actually wanted to send me things, and one of them was Jeffrey. And if you haven't seen his Instagram account, GT3.2, please have a look, because he is a true Porsche fan and lover, just a passionate Porsche fan, just like myself. And he sent me this very old magazine from Porsche Panorama from the beginning of the 70s, and also the first one here is from 1959. And finally, I have decided, it took me some time to realize what to do with these beautiful items. And finally I have decided to frame them. I have read many of them. I loved, to get the early Porsche thoughts. Very, very interesting. So off they go to the workshop for some framing. And all these magazines got me thinking about the Porsche history. And also the pandemic that I'm present in right now. Before the pandemic, I actually think I have more flight hours than the pilots themselves. But each time I got on board on an airplane, I was filled with joy and a big smile on my face. The reason for that was that, in general, when I sat down in a seat with a proper Porsche history. I'm talking about Recaro, of course. And if you know your Porsche history, you will know that this brand is extremely important if you are a true Porsche fan. Because Recaro has worked together with Porsche since 1930. And unfortunately, these days they don't have as close cooperation as they had in the beginning of the 1930s and even to the 1964 when Recaro sold the Karosseriverket. Yeah, this is very important, because if you do the factory tour and if you listen and read about the Porsche history, you will understand that the body was manufactured by Recaro until 1962. So actually the first Porsche 901 that will later on be called the Porsche 911 when it was introduced in 1964 was manufactured by the Karosseriverket of Reuters, which is Recaro. And if you read this book, which is the history of Recaro, you will actually find out that this company, I think they put it in the very end of the book, on page 373, they summarize it so good, saying, no future without the past, right? And since I have been in my workplace with Recaro doing all these flight hours, I thought, why do I not keep on being in a Recaro? So therefore, with my own money, I have upgraded my airplane seat to a proper gaming seat. Right. Took me just a couple of minutes to I can lock it. The more I play with this seat, the more I understand the ergonomics and the high quality this seat represents. So if you're interested to purchase, as I did, and support Recaro during the pandemic where, well, let's face it, they're not selling much airplane seats, do they? There's a link below. Disclaimer, and this is very important, I did not get anything to do this for Recaro. I'm a true Porsche fan that wants to support the Porsche history. In fact, I had to beg to buy this seat. Nevertheless, now when I have upgraded my airplane seat to a proper gaming seat, and it's so good. I wonder for how long I will be able to keep this from my son, but I'm going to try as good as I can. Whew, my home office is really updated. And my garage is also updated. If you follow me on Instagram, you have already seen this story. Today it's all about Christmas. And Christmas comes with friends and family. Hello.
Hello.
And Christmas present, I think it is, or? Open the door to heaven, get young and sign digital, get the bottle car key, unlock your present, enjoy the jet black Auto Shield PPF Sport-tex Michelin equipped 911 Carrera S and drive.
Come together to celebrate. Yes, every time the snow is falling down.
And if you're not Instagram, so why do you not follow me on Instagram? That's a very interesting and very important question. Oh, it's just getting better and better, this seat. Anyway, if you have not understand why I sold my first 992 Carrera S, it's about time you click the link above and have a look. In the meantime, we are gonna head down about 200 meters that direction where I've parked my car, and where we're going to talk about my new 992, my expectation, and why I purchased it. Here we are then, my 992, actually my second one, and it pretty much looks the same as my first one. There are some differences, as you can see, but I was thinking let's start by driving this beauty and find out which are the most relevant questions to be asked for the second attempt. Ooh. So the big question you have to ask yourself is, why didn't I go with the base Carrera, the 992 Carrera? And that is the very, very important question. And the reason for that is, let me put into manual mode so I can switch the gear manual, and I will come back to the PDK gearbox. The 992 Carrera, it's much more fun to drive on the B road and as a daily driver. And let me try to explain why, and this is very important. When I approach a corner like what I have in front of me, I brake obviously, and I threw down some couple of gears, and then when I push the throttle, I'm just a part of the ride where I cannot control the acceleration, because the power this engine is giving me are so huge. It kind of just throw me out of a corner as a rocket, and without these, computers helping me to be on track, well, then I will be in risky business, especially today when I have all these, it's a condition, it's snow, it's wet, it's ice uncertain, but obviously the Michelin Alpines keeps me on track. And this is reaching a bridge, and just to give you an education on driving on B roads in winters, this is a part where you go very slow, because the cold will come under the bridge, and yes, as expected, here is plain ice, so that's where you're gonna need to take it very, very carefully. Coming back to the 992 Carrera and the reason why I did not select one. Well, the main reason is these conditions that I'm driving in right now. Wet, slippery, and even icing conditions. Because the base Carrera is not possible to get with Porsche torque vectoring. And that is such a game changer when it comes to driving on a bit slippery conditions. Obviously then, I could look at the Carrera 4, which I did a lot, but I have also decided to go with a used vehicle this time. Therefore, it was important to me to look at the Carrera 4 and Carrera S, and it was all about finding the right car. And buying a used car, you cannot choose everything by yourself. You have to kind of settle on what you're finding, looking at the price tag, and then select what's important for you. And for me, Porsche torque vectoring was a game changer. Without that, I will walk away. And this Carrera S, 992 Carrera S, it's obviously, as it is standard, has the Porsche torque vector. That's the number one. And also, I was a bit angry because all the talks on the internet, it's oh, you know, it's much easier to sell the Carrera S, blah, 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 blah. And the problem is when everybody's talking about that, that's what people are buying. So that kind of disappointed at myself following the crowd in that issue. And as it is today, I actually believe that we don't need this kind of power that the Carrera S perform. This is much faster than my previous 991.2 GT3. But that's just how it is. Ooh, but it is a true blast on the B road, heavy braking, and then searching for grip, which leads me to talk through to the wet mode. I'm driving on the wet mode, and I must say that on slippery, icy winter roads, it works as good as in the wet. To be honest, I'm not sure I would use it on the wet mode. I think I still have some tremendously good grip from the tires that I had. But on this slippery ice condition, I think the wet mode is really good, because what's happening is that you can have a larger throttle movement, which means that you have the pedal could travel much faster without getting all these power at once. Kind of gives it back to what I'm talking about with the base Carrera. Remember, the Carrera 4 do have Porsche torque vector, and since it is a four-wheel drive vehicle, very few of them for sale in Sweden right now. So, well, I ended up with a Carrera 2. Well, that's the story about that. As with all brands, with new models, it takes some time to fine-tune the factory to assemble a perfect manufactured car. Well, in this case, according to my resources, for Porsche it took to December 2019. That's when, you know, the extra torque or loosen bolts and screws has been done to have a perfect quality fit of the 992. That's why it was important for me to find a vehicle with manufacturing year 2020. It's nothing wrong with the early editions, but they had to be tuned in at the Porsche centers. Ooh. It gives me so much joy to drive this. The character of the 911 shows up much clearer when you drive on a bit slippery conditions in comparison to the mid-engine equipped sports car from Porsche. You feel that the engine are a bit more behind you than in a Boxster or in a Cayman. And it also makes it a thrill when you brake, because as I mentioned, let me try to explain, this is very important for me, and why I love the 911 is because you feel the weight distribution much easier with the engine more in the back, which means that when I let me have a look in the mirror, when I brake, I feel the engine coming in front of me, and when I throw down the gears and giving throttle, I feel how the car sets down and pull away. And when you turn in, it is so balanced, so you feel that the pressure is leaning over the front wheel, giving that grip that you want and need when you drive. And that's why I love the 911 from a driving perspective. And you feel when you lift up like this from a corner, lift off the foot from the brake, and it kind of feels like the car is pushing you away in a much clearer way in comparison to the mid-engine sports car. The mid-engine sports car, don't misunderstand me, it has their joy because it's much more balanced, but it does not give you the communication as the 911 does. Ooh. I do like the lightness, especially on my Spider. The lightness I have on my Spider is something that I miss on this car. And what I mean by that is that you feel that the car has to work with its weight, right? So it's not about the car being heavy, it is because it has to work with it. On the same thing, as I love it when I can feel the engine rotate and shifting the weight from the back to forth when I brake and accelerate. At the same time, I feel how the car needs to work with the weight. And that's what I truly love about the lightness with my Spider, is that it truly feels balanced, that it's a different way of getting out of the corner with my Spider in comparison with this car, especially since it has this monster of an engine which throws me out of the corner, and I kind of uses a circuit ticket to get out of the corner, but it feels in my belly a lot when I throw it away. It's a beautiful car to drive. I'm so blessed. Another relevant question you need to ask yourself is, why didn't I go with a manual gearbox? Well, it's quite simple, ladies and gentlemen. I already had the manual gearbox in my Spider, and I wanted to drive and test out the PDK 8-speed PDK gearbox, and in addition get to know it even better, to see what kind of connection I get. So let me talk about the PDK gearbox. This is very important. I'm currently driving 60 kilometers an hour and 3000 RPM in third gear. I can easily go to fourth and go back to 2000, and obviously go to second, and I will have 4000 RPM in 60 kilometers an hour. This is something that I really appreciate with the PDK gearbox, is that you could actually easily use the total range of this turbo engine. Remember, all the thrust from this turbo engine starts at 2000 RPM. You don't have to stress this engine, and the 8-speed PDK gearbox really gives you the opportunity to experience the entire range of this engine. Heavy braking, using the manual shifter, and select the RPM that you would like. Get the engine braking going, and without any distraction from your driving. Give throttle when you want, or a bit slippery. Use the acceleration and shift before the max RPM. That is much more engaging, I believe, driving the PDK gearbox than to, throw it to the very bitter end. Establish them. More gears gives you the possibility to really get to the exact point of the torque that you would like to have. But what happens then when you stretch the engine? It just spins. As you can see, it does not change. If you are in a manual mode, it will not change gear whatsoever. It will just stop the engine from revving more, and you could actually be in full control of the vehicle. So you do get a true connection with the PDK gearbox, not as much as you do obviously as with the manual, which if you follow me, know that I truly appreciate. But it gives you the possibility to have the comfort in a city driving where the car will shift automatically. You will have help on track days, because it is quite busy on track day, and if you're not used to go on track days, the PDK gearbox will be much easier for you to control. Well, actually it will control itself during the track day. And on the B roads, use it down to 3000 RPM, feel the throttle, giving it, braking, shift down with your PDK gearbox, turn into the corner. I have to take it easy because it's a bridge, and on the bridge it's very, very, very icy and slippery. Brake again, downshift, and coming to apex, getting out of that corner, slowly on the trail. Oh, it's that slippery, and then shift up before it hits the max revving. Trying to, as I said, it's a true experience of getting to know the engine's total performance from 2000 RPM up to the 7000 plus. Disclaimer, Michelin provided me with these winter tires, but I have been a customer for Michelin since I was 19 years old, and that's a good reason why I have been that. The performance Michelin provides are tremendously good. And one thing that I have observed, all the press cars that I've seen from Porsche, all are equipped with Michelin. I still am a bit disappointed, angry, call it whatever you would like to call it, that we cannot select the brand type of the tires when we specify our new vehicle. If someone wants to run a different brand from Michelin, it should be a cost-free option. Ooh, it is so tight. And that reminds me that there is something that when I started to drive the 992 again, everybody on the internet writes, oh, the 992 has become too heavy and too large, too big footprint, it's a GT car. Again, I have to ask myself, how many of these people have actually been driving them? How many have actually tested them properly? Because if you look, and this is very important, if you look at the 992 Carrera S manual gearbox, it is actually 10 kilo lighter than a 997 Carrera, because the 997 has the heaviest body of them all. In fact, if you compare the 997.1 GT3 RS in comparison to the 991 GT3 RS with the PDK gearbox, it's only 45 kilo heavier. So I think we should be very careful when we say that the 992 has become a GT car. It is still a large footprint in terms of centimeters, but it is not as heavy as we think it is. Especially if you're a 997 fan, I think you should. Jet black metallic is a color that just reflects the surrounding. It means that sometimes it even is white. Take a look next time you see a jet black metallic and you will find out all the colors it reflects. Red calipers, I'm okay with that on a jet black metallic, but you all know me, I prefer them black. You know, I have a big problem with the 992. Each time I view it, I just, you know, it is so beautiful. All the picture I've seen, I said, doesn't matter. But it doesn't make it justice. You cannot photo this car and make it such a huge 911 experience as it is in flesh. If you are into a 911, you should not look at the picture, but instead try to get yourself beside the car and touch it. Touch the fenders and feel how it bends on the different angles. It's so purely done. It's a sculpture. And in the front, if you just lay your hand on the front fender, and you will feel how much it actually bends. You will be surprised. Just do that next time you have the opportunity. And also the lines that shapes the hood and the rounded headlights, which actually has the beautiful 918 design look of it. Pay attention to all the design details and you will, as I have done, fall in love with the design of the 992. The shapes of a 911, despite the color, is unique. With all the lines, each color will give you a different experience. And therefore it is, for me, hard to select a color on the 992. One thing is for sure, the sport design package is not for me. It interferes with the overall beauty of the 992 and shakes off its 911 heritage. Step inside and the design is not as sharp. I don't understand why screens are selling, but the inflation is in quantity and size is here to stay. Overlooking the screens and cast them aside, then the design opens up and puts a big smile on my face. Daily driving, in contrast to driving specs, needs some cozy furnishings. Deviated stitching, in combination with the Sport-tex interior, is a new favorite for me.
I had a friend of a friend, never thought I would see you this soon, but hope she really loves you, 'cause I swear you deserve everything. Wish that I knew that sooner. We got sober, it was over, but I told you I'll do it all over again. At your place over spring break, a heartache, I do it all over again. Do it all over again.
So I kind of laugh when I read the comments of my video, when I disapproved certain things of the 992. That video is still very much valid. I get some wind noise from the A-pillar, and that must be just a design flaw from Porsche. As I said, the Sport exhaust, even though I could push this button here saying that the only thing I'm experiencing is that the tone changed to a darker one and the red light starts to shine on the display here. Otherwise, I'm sorry, the Sport exhaust is for me rubbish, especially outside the vehicle. Yes, as I said, the tone is changing, but it's no big difference. And I wish everybody could save their money, don't option out your 992 with Sport exhaust. And then again, we have and this is the problem, because all salesperson at any Porsche center will say, buy the Sport exhaust system, because otherwise you will not be able to sell the car. And for me, that is just pure business. It kind of feels like, oh, tell everybody that buys a 992 that they have to buy a Sport exhaust, because otherwise we'll not earn as much money as we want. Because it's a $3,000 options that will, just don't give you any pleasure in your driving. As I said, yes, it is a difference, and I believe that if you're not living in a country with particulate filter, that might be even a huge difference. But in Sweden, in Europe, I'm sorry, it's not that huge of a difference. Go to third-party product instead if you want the proper noise. That's what I'm saying anyway. Actually, on the very slow rev, you can actually feel that the Sport exhaust actually creates resonance, nothing else. Can you hear this? That's the best part. I actually ask you guys if you can hear the change of the Sport exhaust. I am trying to get used to the shaving machine looking like gear lever, but there is a genuine problem with it as well, because the old one I could actually shift manual with, and on a racetrack it doesn't matter, because then obviously you will use the pedals behind the steering wheel. But in traffic, where I actually like to shift gear myself also, well, the gear levers kind of ends up on the wrong places. Just pity things. One thing, a new equipment that solves an issue. Remember, I complained about that the left and right instrument was covered, or I couldn't see them because of the steering wheel, because I had the GT Sport steering wheel. On this vehicle, I have the stock steering wheel, which solved this problem perfectly, and I don't feel at all that I have a less sportier steering wheel. In fact, I kind of prefer this one in comparison to the GT Sport steering wheel. A good improvement. And if I have known the beauty of the standard steering wheel, that is what I would have selected. As always, well, the PCM system is rubbish, as I've said so many times, but the Sport-tex interior, oh my gosh, that gives you so much more luxury feeling. It gets a much more sportier feeling. I prefer it 10 times more times than the leather. Sunroof in glass is perfect during this winter times, letting that little light that I have in Sweden into the coupe. I'm telling you, I am totally in love with this cabin. It took me a long time to get used to the screen, but I'm getting there. Needs more time though for the shaving machine. I wonder if I can... Ooh, smooth like a baby. Need some more here. Making a U-turn. Well, obviously I will definitely miss the rear axle steering, but it's not bad in a 992. But as I've said so many times before, I do appreciate the RAS, or the rear axle steering. It is not as important as in the 991, no question about it. but it gives you that extra possibilities, getting out of the corner, actually turning into the corner, helping you to reach that apex on track days. It also helps you parking on tight areas in the city, so it's not only for track use only. But if you live out in the country, rarely go into the city with your 911 and just do 1 or 2 track days a year. Just leave the rear axle steering, you will be good on the 992. On the 991 though, it's a different character. And if you haven't seen my rear axle steering review of the 992, well, have a look above. In general, I like the German culture, but there is one thing that irritates me a bit, because a German never admits that he has done something wrong. Remember that I have been locked in my previous Carrera S and in the Taycan. And the way that German philosophy is to solve things is to update the software. So these days when I get locked into the vehicle, it will actually turn up a message say, release and try again. But sometimes, let me show you, when I just pull it once it opens, and sometimes I need to pull it twice. So let's see what this gives me today. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, I've pulled the lever once and I cannot get out of my vehicle. This is true ridiculous. For me to get out, remember, if this was an emergency, what would you do? You would most likely be in panic. What you need to do is to release it back again and then push it. I don't like this. I just love the snow, but it has been a bit difficult for me to film a few stone chips that I have on my vehicle. Well, the snow kind of gets in the way. But it brings me to a very important question, PPF. This car did not have PPF from factory, and I have a few stone chips. I decided to put on new PPF, and remember, it's not about which film quality you select, but the craftsmanship or the company that will put the film on your vehicle. In this case, AutoShield in Stockholm I was lucky enough, he provided that for me on this vehicle, but remember the Carrera S that I had, the first one, I paid with my own money. I also think you should pay extra respect to second-hand vehicles that has PPF from the beginning of its lifetime. That, the first owner put some effort to preserve the car for the future, for the history of the brand, and make sure that you pay an extra $1 for that. Beautiful roads. Not only am I blessed driving a 911, I'm blessed with these roads. I'm blessed with these roads. Let's throw down a few gears. As I said, there is engagement driving the 992 with the PDK gearbox. Definitely, never say that it's not engaging, not as much as with the manual gearbox, but like this, approaching a corner, heavy braking, few down, a few gears, bang, directly right gear in, give throttle, off you go in this rocket of a car. Look at this ground clearance that we have on the Carrera S. For me, I think it is too huge. It feels like you could go on off-road with this vehicle and speed bumps are not a problem at all. In fact, remember, this car is lowered 1 centimeter extra. There is an option for PAS performance, which lowers the car 1 centimeter and give you this more aerodynamic front lip. And I still think I can lower this car additional 3 centimeters and still be good with the speed bumps and everything. And it doesn't matter if it is spring or summer or winter, it just gives you that beauty of experienced road. Yeah, it's a bit romanticized, but anyway. This is my second 992 Carrera S. Yes, it has its flaws, and it's not a perfect vehicle, but it gives you so much joy behind the steering wheel that it's hard not to go ahead and buy a second one. I had my issues with my first one. As I mentioned, I was looking for a manufacturing year 2020. I found this beautiful example, and if I find the time, I'm going to try to show you all the options that I have on my vehicle. But please, if you're considering a 911, don't rush away from the 992. I think it is a perfect combination of driving experience and usability of all 911 produced. It's the second time I record this. First time I didn't have any voice. Perhaps that would be been a better video, me being quiet. I'm 100% sure that someone at Porsche AG are writing the sales book for everybody, saying, okay, if anyone option out that car without any sport exhaust, I'm gonna lose money, and therefore no bonus to any sales guys that sells a 992 without a sport exhaust. So that's it, and that's how it happens. It's like, oh, everybody needs a sports exhaust happens. I'm not sure how to approach that. I'm babbling a lot, don't I? Babbling too much, but this is my true joy. Oh, here it's slippery.